Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about the struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. So as you know, if you've been around hanging about my podcast for a while, I talk almost obsessively about the working genius. But I have mentioned a few times something called the motivation code. So I wanted to bring on a wonderful guest to help explain that better and really give you a better feeling for how you can use this and incorporate this as well into understanding more about yourself, getting more impact from yourself, and getting more impact out of your team. I'd like to welcome as a guest to the podcast today, Laura Roland. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks, Kristina. This has been a long time coming, so it really is. I'm very, very excited to be able to be here today and have this conversation with you.
Me too. So Laura is a certified Catholic motivation coach. So Laura, I'm going to let you explain what that is for us.
Absolutely. So hello, everybody. I am Laura Roland, and I am a certified Catholic motivation code coach, just like Kristina said. And the motivation code assessment is a very unique assessment in that it really gets to the heart of why we do what we do. There are many good, and I use the word holy assessments that give us so much great information about ourselves. The working genius it's one of my favorites because it absolutely helps us understand, our workflow, where we fit in that process. And then the assessment that I use, the motivation code, actually gets to why is that? What is it about tenacity that I love? What is it about that wonderment, that wondering that I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is where I could do this all day, every day. And that's really what the motivation code helps you to determine. It's a very unique assessment in that it starts with our own personal stories of fulfillment. So times in your life where you took an action, and whether you were successful in that action or not is not really the point. It is, did you feel a sense of fulfillment as a result of taking that action? Mm-hmm. And we can trace those patterns back all the way back to early childhood, if we can think that far back to, something that happened yesterday. So when we look at those times in our life where we felt that deep sense of fulfillment, those are the actions we're going to revert to, default to, all day, every day. Those are the things that bring us that, even a sense of joy. The Catholic part comes into play, and I can coach secularly. I can take the Catholic part out, but I prefer to coach through the lens of the Catholic faith, because what I really help people discern is how they're living out their personal vocation. So primary vocation is to love and serve the Lord. Secondary is the state in life in which we do that: married, single, religious, priest, brother, whatever that is. And then in that state of life, it is, what do we do in that state of life to love and serve the Lord? And so having this information about ourselves, why things light us up, why things burn us out, that's really what we get to the crux of the matter, and then help you to use that in that discernment process of, is this job I'm doing a good fit for me? Am I truly showing up as my best self and reflecting Christ back to the world? Because that's what happens when we are fulfilled. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell. There's a lot to unpack about it, but that's really the basis of it. I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and it's based off of my own encounter with the motivation code and some coaching that I had as well, and then just the transformation that happened in my life, and then wanted people to experience it from there.
I know. So I know I've had the benefit of going through having some of my motivations coached through with Laura. And I've just found that understanding a bit more about like the why behind it. Like, I still love how the working genius is a very simple way to make my work flow better and help my clients flow their work better through their systems. But when we're really trying to understand our teams and understand ourselves, understanding those motivations behind it, my number one motivation is that evoke recognition. And leaning into the geniuses, a lot of people would say, oh, that's galvanizing. And it's like, it's not. Actually, I love to get recognition for my enablement and my discernment. And so
Mhm.
it leans in and it kind of connects to the geniuses. So I found some great freedom, like freedom from guilt, much like I do in the Working Geniuses, because I thought that evoke recognition was prideful and
Mhm.
was a sinful view of my work. Like I wanted people to recognize me. It's like, look at me, look at me. But
It's funny, Christina, because I have so many women, because I work with a lot of high achievers who are high achieving, which is the category I would put you in after knowing you now for a good solid year. We've journeyed together through highs and lows of business life and personal life and all sorts of stuff. And I would definitely put you in that category. And the evoke recognition is really one that women especially struggle with, and for the very reasons that you do. But when we have that language to really understand what it is, and when we come at it from that good and holy desire, which is what how the Lord's created you, right? To show up in the world. It's a beautiful motivation. And for you, it manifests as like you're comfortable in the spotlight and then you turn it to something really amazing that's going to help other people. And that goes with some of your other motivations that we can, talk about it as we go through. But I love how you said like kind of got you away from that judgment, right? Because is this prideful? Is this like all about me? And the reality is that it can be all about you, but then you use it as kind of a superpower. I use that word kind of jokingly. I don't really mean like a supernatural power, but it really is how you're wired. And when we are rightly ordered in how the Lord has created us to show up in the world, it's brilliant. And you're using it exactly the way that you're supposed to. And it does definitely tie to like, why do I want to enable people? My enablement, like, well, why am I doing this? And that's why you're evoking recognition for something that you really are passionate about and believe in, which is helping teams thrive and leadership be the best they can be.
yeah. Yeah. It's very powerful. So help us understand just a bit more. How can someone take these motivators and then like what would they apply them to? What would that look like to put it into their life and to their work?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with work first. So the work that I do with the motivational abilities, as I like to call them, is very complementary to what you do with your team building. You bring people together to help leaders really understand how their teams work best, like who's on the bench, right? Like who can you suit up when in a project, right? You're not going to bring in a galvanizer at the very beginning of a project, right? To say they're not wondering about anything. They're like, they just want to jump in and do, right? And so the work that I do helps a leader really understand how they're wired motivationally, really coming at it from this lens of even a servant leadership. Like, how can I get the best out of my team? I want my team to thrive. I want my team to feel fulfilled. How do I keep them engaged in the work? So if you understand what really motivates them, and then the flip side is what burns them out, where that disengagement is going to happen, then you can look at your team and say, okay, who is going to be really motivated to finish? Finish is one of the motivations, right? And in your terms, that would be your tenacity. Yeah. Right. So, but there's layers of tenacity. Some people want to finish and some people want to make a team and some people want to gain ownership. And those are all very different motivational abilities. So if you understand those nuances of your team, you can just create a more effective collaborative environment to get the things done that need to get done. And then you're going to have a team that's very working at a high sense of fulfillment and a better sense of and deeper engagement. So they're much more committed to what you're doing because they understand why they're doing it. Right.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's one way. So there's the leadership piece, really understanding yourself as a leader. Why do you get frustrated with that one person? Right. who's doing something very different. Like they're going around and they're all about like, I think there's a better way we could do this. Like, why are we doing it the same way? If you're someone who is established, like you're high on the establishment part, like that's your top motivator. Establish something right from the beginning. All the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and the boxes are all checked. And you've got somebody on your team that's like, yeah, but well, we could do this. And what about this? Or what about this? And you're like, you are driving me crazy, right? But if you had that language to understand, okay, they're really coming at this from a place of maybe they see potential everywhere. So how can I use that? Like, where can I use that in our workflow, in the process, in the company? So there's lots and lots and lots that can be done with that.
Yeah.
With motivators. Yeah.
Just in like talking through that, like it just makes me think of like these misunderstandings, difficult conversations that everybody
Oh, right.
has.
Yeah.
And like it's just literally because sometimes we're motivated differently, or we're
Right.
thinking about it differently, and it's a lot about how we're wired.
Mm-hmm.
And what I always say is that first step when we're having something difficult is to either create empathy or like some kind of an agreement. So if you can create empathy, so understanding those motivators and understanding the
Yeah.
demotivators can help, maybe the differences between
Mm-hmm.
them can really help create that empathy from the get-go. Like, oh, Kristina, you're low on design, so you don't want to create this.
Right.
You
Right.
know, so
But if the job requires some design,
mhm,
right, then there are ways that you can say, listen, I know that this isn't like your favorite thing to do. So let's create an opportunity for you to work at this. Do you need more runway? Do you need more lead up time to get this
mhm,
done? You're going to work at it for shorter periods of time. I understand that about you. And I know this is a difficult thing for you to do, but it's still your responsibility. So let me help you figure out a way forward with this. It
mhm,
just creates that open dialogue for a leader with their team to say, okay, like, I don't have to get frustrated with why they're not doing things the way that I want them to do. It's how they're wired to work. And how can I be a good steward of that? Right. It really helps you to see that with your team.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I just love the nuances. So
Yeah.
how would a leader be able to engage that with their team? Like how would they learn about it? Like what would that look like?
Yeah. So I specialize in small teams. So my engagements are typically I go in with the leadership. I will work with up to like 4 or 5 of their top people. So they could bring in their administrators, like for Catholic schools, for instance, a principal and their just administrative team. And everybody takes the motivation code assessment. And then the leader gets not only their own like coaching through, here are your top 5. This is you, like in a nutshell, right? And we're not trying to box anybody in. It actually unboxes you. It actually kind of breaks you free from some things. And
Mhm,
then they also look at their team, the people, the small team. And then we look at the gaps. We actually look at what the work is, what the expectations are, what the mission is. And then we look and say, well, listen, you got 27 people, not 20. I use 27 as my number. So you have 4 people who are all finishers, and you don't have anybody that is like going to identify potential, anybody that's going to systematize. So you really have to look at what the gaps are in motivational abilities. And
mhm,
then you have to sort of figure out, okay, well, where does it make sense then? Why do I have so and so on my filing system if they're burnt out from it, and yet this other person loves to systematize? Like, is there a swap that we can make there? So it really gets to the heart of who's doing what work, and it
mhm,
helps you sort of think outside of the lines of a normal definition of job description. So
mhm.
it's not so much like who's a good fit for the job. It's what tasks are a good fit for the people that I have in place,
Yeah,
where you can make those shifts. And so it's just a different way of looking at the workflow. It's a different way of looking at mission achievement. It's a different, if you've got a project, and again, I'm thinking about Catholic schools, that's my background. So like everybody goes through accreditation, and those are actually usually extra projects that have to be done. So if it's outside the scope of a teacher's ability, or their regular job duties, who do you have? Wouldn't it be exciting to think about like who on your team is going to go explore like new programs, and who on your team is really going to like finish writing that 1,000-page document?
mhm,
Like,
mhm.
and if you understood that about your team, wouldn't that sort of keep the workflow going and that kind of
Mhm.
thing? So that's just one example
Yeah.
of what that could look like. I also do something called partnership mapping. This one's really interesting. So if you work with a business partner, I've actually also done this with husbands and wives. That's fascinating to see that. But and then there are some husbands and wives who are actually the partners, like in the
Mhm,
business.
mhm,
And so when we sit down and we look at partners, we look at, again, you see the best of that person. They start to make sense to you. And it's things like, well, I've always known that you are a rule follower. And I've never appreciated that before, but I see now where that is an asset to our work. And so when I'm not following the rules, I'm going to tap into you and say, this is where I need for you to follow the rules and establish this for me. And then when you're done, hand it off to me so I can go run and evoke all the recognition. That's an actual true partner mapping that I did recently. And that had been a sticking point for them because one was such a rule follower and the other one was like, listen, I got to get this out. Like, I got to do all the things. And so they had to come to an agreement about, let me finish first and then you can run with it and I'm good. I'll establish it and off you go.
Yeah.
So again, it's knowing that language for that other person.
Exactly. So something I see in my work a lot is that either certain industries or even people will tend to hire people like them. Now, in a working genius, that does make a bump in the road in terms of getting things implemented because it doesn't flow as smoothly. Is it the same sort of thing in a motivation code? Like if you're lacking certain motivators, is your team needing to fill them?
Yes. So you want, if you're the leader and you need to hire a chief financial officer, right? And you need to hire a chief information officer and you have to hire a chief marketing manager, right? Those three are going to have completely different motivational abilities that you're going to want in that. So like your chief operations officer is going to want to be a key person. They're going to be highly motivated. You're going to want someone highly motivated who can handle the inflow and the outflow of communication. They have their pulse on every single thing that's going on in your business, right? Like they're the daily operations person. So, and if you're not that kind of a person, obviously that's why you're hiring somebody. You want that in that person. There's an old saying, Kristina, and I wonder if you've run across this as well. Like you can learn job skills on the job. Like you can learn systems and you can learn those things. You can't learn motivation. Like you can't, you're either motivated by it or it's a burnout zone. Like, and you have to learn how to tap into those, but you kind of come to it with that. So you need to understand what the job entails and what you're looking for, not just in a skill level, but they're going to be motivated to be that key person. It can't exhaust them to be, death by 1,000 Slack messages, as we used to say, or like they need to not mind that they have the keys to the kingdom hanging off their belt, kind of thing. If you need a chief financial officer, you're not going to hire somebody that is all about like, well, let's explore this or let's, you need somebody that's going to finish a task that's all about establishing rules. They're all about that, building that firm foundation, that is something that really motivates them. Right. So there's different components to those kinds of things. So you need different people on your team. You have to have somebody that doesn't really operate like you do if you want to run that effectively.
I feel like forever we've been told, find people that, fill in your gaps. Like that's, but both with Working Genius and with MCode, it's one of those, this is a concrete way to do that. Like this is my de-motivators. Let me find somebody who can help me with these.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now would you recommend people somehow try to implement this into their hiring process, or what would that look like?
Yeah, it's really exciting work. I've actually worked with some companies who had me rewrite their job descriptions and included a motivational ability. Like we are looking for someone who is highly motivated to. So I looked at, so they gave me what the actual tasks were. And then I worked it up in terms of like, these are motivational abilities. So if you are highly motivated to X, Y, and Z, you would be a good fit for this job. And then conversely, if this burns you out, or if this is not something that you would engage with, this is not the right job for you. I actually had somebody put that on their job description. I was like, oh, no, we never go to the negative. And she's like, oh, no, we're putting this on, we're putting this on there. And so it actually helped them kind of self-select out. Like people would look at this and they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to be on call 24 hours a day. Right. But then there are people that are like, oh yeah, I don't mind that at all. Like that would be great. I want to be included. So you can look at it, often say, especially when people leave a job, or you have to let someone go. I often say, it's not that they weren't a good fit for the job. It's that the job wasn't a good fit for them. It's putting the person first.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that takes that shame, that takes that judgment out of it. It takes that like, there were just things about the work that I just didn't enjoy and couldn't overcome the disengagement and the burnout. And that's been the story that I've had a couple of jobs like that for myself. And I had to really understand that through that lens of motivation. I had the skill set. I even had strengths, if we wanted to throw strengths finders in the mix there, but it was motivationally, it wasn't a good fit. And I just couldn't overcome that.
Yeah.
So,
I've had the
So
same.
does that give you a little bit of an idea about like a way that could help in a hiring process? Even questions, asking them in an interview, tell me what motivates you. Would this be something that motivates you? Do you even know what motivates you?
I feel like people don't, though. Like if you'd asked me 10 years ago, what motivates you? I'd be like, I don't know. Getting
I have no
excited
idea
about
because
things.
we don't know ourselves. Right.
Exactly.
It's a personal growth thing. So I think, people will say, oh, I'm motivated to make a lot of money. And that's great. You can make a lot of money, but why? I might be motivated to make money because I then want to turn it around and make an impact in my local community by donating it.
Exactly.
Other people might want to make money because they want to establish a financial future for their family. Two completely different motivators, but it's the tangible money is what they think they're chasing. And really it's the bigger picture of, or maybe actually it's more a granular picture if we think about it, like it's when we really drill down as to, what purpose does that money serve?
Yes.
And so I think in the hiring process, if you want that for your people to say, like, well, what really does motivate you? And how can I use that language to help you? Right. I work with a business coach, and when I get stuck, I've given her permission I've coached her on how to coach me when I get stuck using my motivational language. And she's brilliant. You've seen her do it. Like she's brilliant at it. And I almost want to get mad, like, don't throw that back in my face. And I'm like, oh, no. It's really true. Like now I understand it through a different lens. And so she wants the best for me at that point. And so it's a really great way to grow your team.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
So we've mentioned a couple of other, like we mentioned StrengthsFinder. There's also the Myers-Briggs. So like taking in all of the assessments about, like how does motivation code fit in there? Like where would you place that? How would you relate it? What are your there?
So I love learning about myself. Like I can never learn. Like I was the kid when the little like weekly digest thing in the newspaper I don't know if you have that and where you are, but there was like this little parade magazine and there was always some sort of like, take this personality test. And I was like, okay, what am I? What kind of lip gloss should I always wear? I don't know, whatever it is.
17 magazine, right?
Yeah, right. All those. So there's just that some people are just like super wired to want to learn about themselves. And so I've taken almost every assessment that I can that's out there, just to kind of get some information about myself. And I always felt a little like, oh, that's interesting, but it's sort of, this is my take on it. So I'm not projecting this on anybody else. This was just my experience, but I felt boxed in. I felt like it was just sort of like, I'm one with like 5 other people, right? Because I only have 5 choices. Like I'm only this or that. I can only do this or I can only do that. And it wasn't until I took the motivation code assessment that I felt like it was sort of the missing piece. It was the why. I wanted to know why I did the things that I did, or why things that everybody else seemed to really enjoy. I'm like, I don't want any part of that. Like, that's not fulfilling to me. But I knew these things about myself. Maybe instinctively, I just didn't have the language around it. And so that's what I feel like motivation code gives us, is that language to say, why am I a galvanizer? Why is it so exciting to me to be, if you're using the StrengthsFinder, like, why am I a connector? Like my number 1 in StrengthsFinder is connector, which is hilarious because collaborate for me is pretty low on the list for me as a motivator. Yeah. So I had to really kind of unpack that. So I'm a connector. Why am I a connector? Well, I'm a connector because ultimately I want to meet the needs of people, which is my number 1 motivator. Right. Okay. You might be a connector at the top too, but yours is probably
5. Yeah.
Yeah. So your connection piece is driven by, you want to evoke recognition of other people. And you do that by bringing people together or connecting, one thing with the other to make an impact. Right. So long-winded answer is the motivation code actually, I feel like is that foundational piece. It is the center of everything.
Hmm.
And then I look at things like StrengthsFinder is like, that's your tool in your toolbox to then go and live that out.
Mhm.
Right. So if I'm meeting the needs of somebody, because that's what I'm highly motivated to do. And again, there's a language difference there, is that these are action words. So I am highly motivated to meet the needs. I'm highly motivated to evoke recognition. Right. So they're action oriented. They're about doing. So you're taking an action.
Mhm.
The StrengthsFinder is more like, okay, what tool do I have in my toolbox? What am I really strong at doing? What do I like to do that I can then make this happen? Right. So then that's a layer that gets added. You're sort of like, oh, what's over here that I can bring with me to implement this and make this happen? And then understanding your working genius really helps you understand where you fit, particularly in a project, in a workflow, in that work environment, right? Like, I am not a galvanizer, as we all know, as we have all learned. And that's because those are all of my low zones for me. My burnout zone for me is all about that galvanizing. I am high on the potentiality of things, right? And I'm very other focused. And so that kind of comes into play, in a different way. But it took me a long time to understand that about myself. And so when you've got language of other assessments, you can sort of say, oh, that makes sense why I'm not tenacious, because I'm not motivated to finish. Let me just put my head on a swivel and I identify potential things all day long.
Yes.
I used to drive my former business partner crazy with that. She's high on finish.
Oh my goodness.
Right. She would be high on that tenacity to like, right. I'm using that correctly, right? Like, let's get this done.
Get
like,
it done and finish.
let's go. And I'm like, but could we just like tweak this one? No, we're done. Like, we're done. Cut off. You're done.
Exactly.
So it gives you that. I really believe it's that inner self. It's really how you're wired. It is really true to how you've been created to show up in the world. So
really, I always say with all of them, nothing gives you a complete picture. They're all glimpses into something. They can all be put together to create a decent picture, but we'll never get a complete picture of ourselves.
No.
We're very complex beings. So
yes. Yeah.
But I love grabbing onto the doing part. And that's what I like about Working Genius as well. It's something about the work. So it's applicable. It's practical. We can apply it. And the motivation code it's even deeper, and even like a deeper way to really understand, to tap into that motivation. Like, we can tap into kind of a broad sense with the Working Genius, but I love that. Like, what specifically about it, what type of work beneath that enablement, so like, because different levels of enablement, like for me, that's my number one genius, but there are some helping of people that is really motivating to me, and there's others that's maybe not,
right. And when you understand it at that level, right, then what does it do? It gives you that permission to say, okay, well, I can do this, but I know that this isn't going to be like, I'm going to have to do this in smaller pieces. I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to tie it to a different motivator, which we can do. That's a skill that you learn, how to tap into your motivators if you have to do something from your lower places of motivation. The other thing I wanted to say too is that the work that I do with Motivation Code isn't just for like in the workspace. And I know that's your wheelhouse and that's your expertise. But I've worked with a lot of like stay-at-home moms who are trying to figure out, like, why can I not get that basket of laundry folded? And yet I will take the kids all day, every day to go do X, Y, and Z. Right. And so it helps people in all states and seasons of life to kind of help you figure out if you're transitioning from one job to another, if you're discerning, your next step, even for do I want to get involved in my parish, or do I want to, not get involved, like all of those things. So it really does help in all areas of life.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're still the same person, whether we're at work or
home. So true. It's so true. It's so incredibly true.
Yes. We don't change. As much as we want to.
No,
we do.
No. We used to, there was a time where, your persona at work and your and your persona at home were supposed to be two completely different things. And
Mhm.
that those lines got blurred pretty quickly. And now it's like, you have to show up as your whole self, in both places. So,
Yeah.
and this helps you understand that.
Helps us show up better, authentically,
Right.
really motivate us and our teams. So.
Yeah. And ultimately it's about living out your purpose with a sense of true fulfillment and joy,
Mhm.
right? It's loving, you love what you do again, right? There's a line in the book from Dr. Joshua Miller, whose life, his grandfather's work and his life work has then been this motivation code. And it's all about like getting back to really loving what you do again, falling in love with that work, falling in love with that process or whatever it is, so that you can be joyful. Ultimately, that's what the Lord did not create us to live in a state of despair and despondency. He wants us to feel fulfillment and joy. And that's when we truly are a reflection of him. So I think that that's the ultimate point in all of this, is to rediscover that.
I agree. I fully agree with that. So you have some super exciting things coming up right now. So some sprints. Can you tell us a little about these sprints that you have coming?
I do. 3 areas that I work with people are on purposeful productivity, which is more task management than time management. I work with people on procrastination, which is a real fun topic. Everybody's like, oh, I get things really done. I'm better last minute. And the reality is that we're really not. Like, we're not at our best selves at that point. And then also I do a lot of work with people around mission, like their mission statements, their why statements, that kind of a thing. So what I thought might be a fun thing to do, just to get us, dare I say, galvanized, to get our work done, to like figure out some things. So these sprints are 3 days, 1 hour a day, and each one focuses on one of those things. So the ones that I have upcoming March 10th through the 12th is something called Shatter the Standstill. And that is where we take one thing that you are procrastinating on and we figure out why, and then we figure out how to tap into your motivators. So we look at your top motivators, we look at your burnout zone, which are your bottom 5, and then we create a strategy for you to get that one thing done. And then the idea is that you replicate that the next time you feel like you're stuck, like you just can't muster the energy. So it's really quick. It's like I said, and it could be like, I have a box to unpack, or I can't get the dishwasher unloaded on Monday morning, like whatever it is, like we fix one thing, but it gets to the heart of that. So that is March 10th, 11th, and 12th. They're at noon Eastern Standard, 11 Central Time, because I'm in Central Time Zone. But there'll be replays if you can't join it live, but there's live coaching, and then there's also group coaching. And then you have access to me via Slack for 7 days afterwards, where you can just ask me questions. The second one is Magnify Your Mission. And that is perfect for people who want to tie their why to their mission statement. So instead of just having like, I serve, whatever it is, you can use these to say, this is why I do what I do. This is why I am an executive business coach. This is why I am passionate about helping teams, right? So for you, as someone highly motivated to make an impact, you help teams realize their vision of being whatever that is. So you take your motivators and you use the language from that to create these why statements. Like, why are you the best person to bring in to help a team thrive?
Nice.
Yeah, I know. You should join that one. I think I just wrote a why statement for you, but that's what we do. But that's what we do.
I need to do the procrastination one too. My struggle would be to pick which task in my procrastination.
And you know what? That is absolutely something that we can do. So the Magnify Your Mission is March 17, 18, 19. Again, it'll be 11 Central, noon Eastern Standard Time. And then again, you get the replays and the 7 days of gap coaching. And gap coaching with me is basically post coaching. You have access to me through Slack for quick questions. You always are going to have things that you want to follow up on or whatever. And we can hop on a quick call, or we can just do a quick exchange over Slack. So, and that's included. And those are just $27. So it's a very easy way to sort of kickstart some things with that.
And if somebody is interested in doing one of those sprints, how would they do that?
So they want to go to my website, which is laurarolandcoaching.com. And then there'll be a banner at the top that will have the information that you can link to it, or a pop-up banner where you can find that. And then I have other coaching that's available as well. But those are the 2 things that are new and exciting through March to get us going.
Awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
Thank you for that. You're such a good steward. You really are. You're always okay. So folks watching, literally, you just saw in action our dear friend Kristina evoke recognition. That's literally what you just did.
And I feel
Literally,
so
that
fulfilled.
is you. Do you feel fulfilled? That's it. Like your whole face lit up. You were like, oh my gosh, like let's do this. Like let's put someone else forward. It's your podcast, but then you pivoted to say, here's a great offer. It's beautiful, right? Like just to see you in action. I know. And you do it. See, when we know, like we don't even realize we're doing it. And so that's when it's just beautiful. It's just your whole face lights up. It's so fun.
Awesome. Laura, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so happy we finally got to do this. We've been talking about it probably since August last year.
I think so. Yeah. We were on a retreat together and we were like, this would be a really great conversation. So thank you for the generosity, Kristina, for your platform and for just a beautiful conversation. You're always a delight to work with. And I'm just so excited to have this time together.
Well, thank you so much. And to the listeners, get in touch with Laura. She's an amazing coach. I love just the way she's got the ability to just hold space for everyone and then bring in your motivators and demotivators to help you understand how to get the best from what you're doing. Thank you, Laura. Thank you to the listeners. If you enjoyed the episode today, please share it with a friend, like it, subscribe, make a comment on the YouTube video, and leave a review because that helps the algorithm. It helps people get to know who we are, what we're doing, and how we can bring light into this world. So thank you so much. And we will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.